Do you guys remember a little thing called DLSS 5? Does that ring a bell? You know, that thing that they revealed that was received so ridiculously negatively that they had to frantically initially try to defend it and say that gamers were being unreasonable. But then they kind of just disappeared, went in a hole, and stopped talking about it for months. Well, a lot of people have been wondering, what are they going to do with it? They've invested God knows how much money into this. They were framing this as the next frontier of gaming, okay? Which is kind of crazy to think that they pitched it that way. Like, they were framing this as like the revolution that we saw with like ray tracing, okay? The same type of energy that then dictated the next 5 years of hardware releases, of software releases. Every game was all focused on what hardware or what ray tracing they could do in their games, but they were doing it with this. And it was received so negatively, they disappeared for months. Well, they're back. They're back, okay? And they are taking a slightly different approach to how they frame it. Now, I think they're being cautious with this. They're trying to kind of feel out people's reactions to it and figure out how they're going to do this. Because I hate to break it to you, they're not going to scrap it, okay? You're gonna download it, you're gonna like it, okay? That's what they're doing here. Companies and like studios may be hesitant to market with it. I brought up, I remember when this initially dropped, I was saying how, like, I don't know what this does for marketing games, you know, because the difference between DLSS like screen grabs and the real game screen grabs are so severe. What happens if you get the game trailer that looks like this, but then you download the game and it looks like this because your hardware isn't supporting DLSS 5? You don't have a 50 series, you know? It creates a lot of serious questions over like whether you can actually do that. Like, are you going to market with DLSS 5 turned on or what? Because these look like two different games. You know, like that's kind of a big deal, especially like it's really severe in like the Starfield examples where it's like, okay, yep, that's Bethesda. What is that? Oh my God. You know, like I wouldn't be surprised. Elder Scrolls 6 uses DLSS 5 in all the trailers because it makes it look better. Sorry, I gotta be specific. What are they doing though? Well, at the Siggraph 2026 event in Los Angeles, they had an individual by the name of Edward Liu and Gabriel Leon. They went on stage and they talked a little bit about all of this. And they showed some of the new tools and some of what they're doing with it. And I figured we could look at it because I think it gives us insight into what they're going to try to do and where they're going with all of this. Because again, they're just going to try to relaunch it here, you know, in the near future. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, they do another big push with this. I think they genuinely had no idea it would be received the way that it was. I think they were genuinely shocked that people didn't like it, which is kind of hilarious. It shows you the bubble that they were in. You know, it's always very fascinating to me when a company does something like that and then they're shell shocked by the reaction. Just like you remember the Blizzard thing where Diablo Immortal, you all have phones, don't you? Like they were genuinely shocked that people were not happy, but it's because they were so in their bubble that they thought, you know, they're talking around the conference table and everybody's like, well, yeah, it's Diablo, but you can play it anywhere. And they just had totally memory hold the fact that they were like, you know, pumping it full of microtransactions and loot boxes and all this crap. And I don't know if they did loot boxes, but you get what I mean? Like MTX and everything. It was amazing that they didn't see that coming. And this was another case like that. But let's hear what they have to say.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jensen, for the introduction. Well, the history of graphics film is always awesome to watch. I never get tired of watching it. And you know what? A lot of it actually started right here at Siggraph paper. Well,
so to be clear, this is the director of applied deep learning research at Nvidia, Edward Liu. Way smarter than all of us combined, I'm sure. But as with all of these topics that we're going to look at and go through, just because something is technologically impressive does not mean that you have to like it as a product. Just because something is impressive on a raw accomplishment level does not mean that it's something you want, you know? Like I can appreciate that, like, oh my God, prime example. I'm going to vent for a second. I love Old Town Fort Collins. Okay. It's my hometown, went to college there. I love it. I have never had a single good cup of coffee in that entire city. And it's just frankly because they try too hard, okay? You go to this coffee shop and they're like, oh yes, this is our coffee that's brewed from beans that we actually harvested. And then we flew them on a plane here. But we didn't fly because we didn't want the emissions. So we brought it on a rowboat and then we roasted it using the fire of a hickory tree. And then we let it sun. And while it sat in the sun to kind of warm up the beans. We played Celtic songs and then also songs from the Sahara to give it a good cultural diversity. And we did all that. And they go through this long list of all these well-intentioned, beautiful, fanciful things they did to the coffee. And then you taste it and it tastes like you're licking an armpit. And it's like, I appreciate all that went into this, but it tastes bad. What do you want from me? It tastes bad. It sucks, okay? Like, I'd rather a Slurpee right now. Frankly, what are we doing? Like, it's ridiculous. And that's where I'm at with DLSS 5. At least, you know, we'll see as he's going to go through this and he's going to outline how they've added a bunch of tools and stuff to make it so developers can like fine tune how it's applied. So we'll go through that in a second. But my impression of DLSS 5 after that initial reveal was that it's one of those coffees that's really impressively put together, but it still tastes like an armpit. You know, it's like, okay, I understand that this is hand mortared mushroom powder that's been sprinkled on, and then you also sourced your own guava, and then you went and you milked the cow in the back of the shop and did it by hand. Like, I get that. It tastes bad. What do you want from me? Okay? Like, I understand that this is impressive. It doesn't mean I like it. You know, that's where I'm at.
Today, I have only one thing for you. And I think that could be the next chapter of that film. DLSS 5. We showed just a short glimpse of it at GTC Spring this year. And at Siggraph,
it was enough of a glimpse.
we get to go deeper.
Deeper.
What it is, why we built it the way we did, and why we're so excited about it. DLSS 5 goes back to Turing, which is the first GPU in which we put RT core and Tensor core side by side right on the same chip. And even back then,
and this is what you're going to hear as we go through this, is that they are framing this as like the next evolution of graphics rendering, okay? So they are not walking away from this.
And let me show you what that means. There's a pattern behind that film. Every once a few years, a revolutionary technology come along, and the image realism and fidelity of real-time rendering will leapfrog the previous generation.
So just to be clear, what he's showing here is each breakthrough opens a new scaling curve. So he goes back to 2001 with programmable shaders, kind of a big deal. Then unified shaders in 2006, ray tracing and DLSS in 2018. Major like breakthrough, dictated the next 7 years of rendering pipelines. And then 2025, path tracing and DLSS 4 with the 5090. What is going to go here, do you think?
And it opens a new era, a new platform, and it charted a new curve on this graph. Programmable shader was definitely one of the good examples. Suddenly, all the game artists can write program to shade every pixel. And I still vividly remember how big of a jump it is in game fidelity. And fast forward to today, we're at path tracing with DLSS 4.
If you have the YouTube money and can afford a 5090, yes, you can technically path trace. But let's be honest, the vast majority of gamers are still back here begrudgingly. Okay, like I understand ray tracing's impressive. I get it. For I think the average PC gamer, if they have the option to turn it off, a lot of them do. It's like niche or anecdotal rather. It's anecdotal. Most of my friends, if they're playing like a shooter or if they're playing a game and they have the option between 200 FPS or 45 with no ray tracing, with ray tracing, they're going to choose the 200 FPS with no ray tracing because like, yeah, the reflections are shinier, but I'd rather 200 FPS, you know?
Simulated light at real-time frame rate. But look at the top. We're still not there yet. We're still not at indistinguishable from reality in real-time rendering. So where does the next curve come from? Let's start with what we know.
DLSS 5, baby. That's where they see it coming from. Okay. So again, if you think that they are walking away from this, or if they're, some people, I remember seeing videos where people are like, oh, I think that they're going to can DLSS 5 and they're going to walk away from it and they're just going to pretend like it never happened. Nope. Nope.
Traditional graphics build images from first principles. We author the scene, we simulate the light bouncing inside of it using physics, and then we frame it with a camera that we control down to the accuracy of a millimeter. That's rendering. Every pixel is there because somebody wants it to be there. And while we're doing that, something else happened. Generative models learn photorealism. Once we feed those models enough of the real world, eventually they learned how skin would scatter light, how the hair would glow if they're backlit, or how the glass would bend the world around them. But those generative models are slow and giant, and they're not as easily controllable as rendering can. So wouldn't it be great if there's a way that we can get the best of both worlds?
Bear in mind, when DLSS 5 was first revealed and everybody said, it looks like AI slop. It looks like you're doing generative AI over top of the game. And like, no, that's not what it is. This is exactly what it is. I mean, it's literally exactly what he's describing. It's like, that's literally what it is. Like, you're going to see as he goes through this. It's like, we have the best of both worlds. We're going to render a base layer basically, and then go over top of it with the generative AI stuff. So it's, so it is what we said it was. Okay.
And with that question in mind, we set out to seek the next leap in image fidelity for real-time rendering. And this is what we ended up doing. The renderer keeps building the world exactly as the game has authored it, and the generation becomes the learned stage afterwards to enrich its appearance. So learned generation defines the world.
Also, RKFU Gaming. That's it. I think that's it. Thank you for the sub, my friend. Appreciate you.
And generation enriches the appearance. That's the core intuition behind DLSS 5.
Okay.
And I can describe that all day, but this is Siggraph, so let's roll this reel.
Honestly, I think the environments look good. It gets uncanny when you swap to the faces. And my suspicion for why this is, for one, it looks like the AI slop filter because I mean it's trained on like professional photographers. It's not trained on an actual man from centuries ago. It's trained on like professionally taken photos, you know, so there's a grit that's lost. It's why people have said everything looks too pretty, you know, when AI generates it. And I think that that's a fair complaint. But when you're looking at like the environment around him, as we look at like some of these snippets, like the lighting does instantly look better. It looks more realistic. And I like the jump, you know, you can tell that it's doing a pass to make, especially when it comes to like the individual shadows and stuff. It looks like a jump, you know, it does. But is that necessarily what people will like? I don't know. It does make the lighting look more realistic. It does do another pass on that, but that also removes some of the style that's involved. But I think if this is all DLSS 5 did, I don't think people would be that upset about it. The problem is when you do a pass on humans, it goes straight into that uncanny valley. And one of the things and reasons why I don't think you can do that as casually, like, in that shot, you see somebody that looks like a character in a game. Like your brain registers it as not real. It's fine. Once it goes over with the like AI filter, it gets uncanny because the animation doesn't match the fidelity of like the skin, right? So like you're expecting all of the little micro motions and movements of the eyebrows and the skin and the hair moving and the beard shifting under the weight of the skin moving and everything. But you don't get that because it's not simulating that level of fidelity. It's just going over the top with that pass to make the skin lighting look a little better and stuff like that. And I don't know if there's a good solution to that other than like AI generating micro movements and stuff. It just doesn't really work. You know, it's like having a really photorealistic puppet that you can't move in a lifelike way. And so it becomes uncanny. It's literally what horror movies do. Okay. Like it's literally one of the basic ideas of a horror movie is that you make like a photorealistic puppet of somebody and then they move in this really unnerving way. That's just what this is, but in a game.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. So everything you just saw is traditional rendering followed by DLSS 5, generating the final photoreal appearance in real time. And I think it looks great. It's a new level of realism. But looking real here is only half the problem. The other half is staying true to the original content.
This is the new talking point, okay? This is what they took away from the reaction to the initial reveal. Because what most people said, and I would argue rightly so, is that this looks like a different game. This doesn't even look real. Like it doesn't look like, what are we doing? Okay. And I think that's the main frustration for a lot of people is like, this is Starfield for better or worse. I don't know what this is. This looks like, again, one of those AI generated fan trailers that's like fake. We just looked at earlier on stream for GTA 6 clips. Like it just doesn't look right. It just doesn't look right. Same with this, like the original design of Grace. Like, and then you move forward and you're like, who's that? It doesn't even really look like her, you know? And so people's reaction to this was very forceful, that they felt like it wasn't true to the original artist's vision. And this was also made all the worse by a kind of hilarious blunder that they made, Nvidia in partnership with each of these companies, because people at Capcom came out after the reveal of DLSS 5 and said that they were not informed that this was being shown off or implemented into the game. People that worked on it had no idea. Same with BGS. Apparently Todd just said, no, we're going to do this. Yeah. And then they had a couple of engineers working on it. They showed it off. But people within BGS, apparently, when they saw this stuff, they were like, what? What is this? People within BGS were shell-shocked and didn't know what it was. So it literally was not true to the artist's vision. It was true to like Todd, the executive producer's vision, because I'm sure there's a fat stack that comes with working with Nvidia. But like, what is this? It doesn't even look the same anymore. So now Nvidia's reaction in response to that is to try and market it as you can be totally true to the artist's vision. That's how they're going to sell it.
And that is tricky because all the generative models are probabilistics. You can ask it for a portrait of a merchant at sunset, you get a gorgeous merchant. And you ask again, you get a different merchant. Well, if you ask for 10 times, you get 10 different merchants.
We even saw this effect in some of those DLSS 5 screenshots that they put up on their website. I think they got taken down. But there were the ones of Grace where in one shot, she looks just like beautified. But then in the next shot, she looks much closer to her original character model and what you would see in cutscenes. And then in the next shot, it looks like she straight up has like added eyeshadow and lipstick on. It doesn't even look like the same person anymore, or same like sequence. It looks like she's taking a break to go get, dolled up. And so I feel like you're already, like you're seeing this even in the demos that they've put forward.
And generally the field is steering these generative models with various abstract signals, like text prompt, reference images, 3D proxies, or even storyboards. And by the way, this is a really fast-moving research area that is really fascinating to follow. And they all work. It's just that every one of them still leaves a lot of the room for the model to improvise. And that is totally fine for offline generation. But for real-time rendering, we don't get to pick. Whatever the model generates will get presented to the viewer in the right next frame. So we need some condition that is more constrained and rigorous.
I mean, he did just say whatever the model generates gets presented the very next frame. Again, I thought it wasn't a generative model. Interesting.
Yes. And you know what? There is such a signal that is hiding in plain sight. We're going to use the frame the game just rendered. It's not a prompt. It's not a reference. It's not a proxy scene. It's a renderer's own output. And it's one signal that is actually universally available across all the engines: path tracing, rasterizers, hybrid, whatever. And unlike a prompt, this is actually a very information-dense and pixel-aligned view of the current shot. And can really provide the grounding for a lot of things, like character identity, the lighting setup, the mood, the camera composition, and so on. So we took the render frame and make it more realistic. And the idea is really simple. But the moment we actually set out to build such things, it turns out to be incredibly challenging.
This, I'm going to go out on a limb here, okay? This is where I think there is practical application in this, but it goes to show you how, like, a lot of these guys, I don't think know where to stop. Because if you can feed a model like this that's going to then tweak lighting, as we saw in the previous shots of like the environments, it can then do a pass on like foliage to correct the lighting within the foliage, within the light, or within the leaves and stuff, or within the cloth. If it's like, hey, like the bits of cloth here, what makes doing a model like this really difficult, or a render like this really difficult, is that in real life, this cloth is like sort of translucent. The sun hits it, it's going to illuminate through and then light up some of the skin on the underside of that cloth. And that's just something that a lot of, you know, traditional material pipelines and a lot of engines can't handle. They just can't do that. But you could inform that information of this material, translucency information, whatever, into the model along with the lighting semantics and all that. And then it could go in there and maybe brighten up underneath the sleeve and light that a little more accurately. And this, again, is like the first version of this model. So I'm sure later versions, by the time you hit like DLSS 6 or 7 or 8, it could actually get to the point where it's, you know, actually improving the lighting of some of those micro details. Again, I think most people's frustration isn't from environmental detail and lighting, though. It comes with the faces. That's when it immediately leaps into AI slop and like, what are we doing? It also, I think, just more generally makes everything too pretty. I don't know how you fix that, to be honest. Above my pay grade.
3 fundamental and tough research challenges immediately presented themselves. The first one, preserving the artistic intent.
Again, this is the new push. It's like, focus on how it preserves artistic intent. That's what all this is going to be doubled down on.
When we give the model a render frame, a generative model will change it. That's its whole job. But every change, it comes a chance that it will drift away from the original intent. Say the hero has a scar, and the model just don't like it, it removes it. Yeah, the image now looks cleaner, but it's the wrong character. So we drew a hard line and trained the model in a way to respect those intent. And we used some of the renderer's internal buffers, such as albedos, surface normals, and some of the lighting information to make sure the model can understand what it has to stay consistent with. And within those constraints, the model is free to enrich what sells realism. Things like better subsurface scattering, finer material responses, the light transmission across hair and foliage, even better contact shadows and better environment lighting. So the scar can pick up better skin shading, but it should never disappear. And DLSS 5 must change the image in a way that it does not change the story. That's the first challenge.
Which I agree. I agree. Now, to what extent what's being described now is what would have been described 6 months ago, we don't really know. Because 6 months ago, I think, again, they were so shell-shocked by the negative reaction that they didn't know what to do. They were like, no, it's not AI slop. What are you talking about? But like, it pretty clearly was changing this character into a 40-year-old man. You know, like it wasn't working. Whatever this is, it's not working. So the model needed a lot of adjustment. I don't know if what he's describing is this exact same model that we see applied here, in which case I think it needs more work. You know, or if they've overhauled stuff since this went so badly and since this reveal. But either way, like you're saying the right stuff. It should never change the story or intent. But also part of this, I'm just going to be real. A lot of games are developed with the devs know that this is what the game looks like when they're putting it together. So like he looks a little bit younger because like the texture quality isn't that high because the camera's not going to get that level of fidelity. So it works. Once DLSS goes in and is like, well, we're going to level up that detail, and then it adds all these micro pores and micro detail and stuff, it doesn't really work anymore, and he looks 40 years old. Same with like the Starfield thing, where it just doesn't even look like the same game anymore, because like Bethesda's rendering quality for characters is nowhere near this fidelity. If it's adding a little bit of detail or tweaking a little bit of stuff, it's less noticeable, and I think then people would be less pissed and it wouldn't be so jarring. But they're overhauling so much that it's really, really jarring. But anyway, continuing.
And challenge number 2.
Yassified,
Temporal
yes.
streaming. Most video generators work in chunks. They reason across multiple frames and they generate a batch of frames at once. But with real-time render, we don't get to do that again, because it has to respond to the user input immediately and present and render frame by frame. But luckily, when we're working within the game engine, we do have access to things like motion vectors, and all the DLSS have been using them from day one. They can just tell the model how things are moving across adjacent frames, and the model does not need to infer across pixels and frames to figure out what the motion is. And thanks to that and other things, we managed to make DLSS 5 run causally and frame by frame, one frame in, one frame out, and it does not need to peek ahead, and it remains temporally stable and coherent while doing so. No shimmer, no drifting, no swimming. And challenge number 3, speed. A 4K frame is made of about 8 million pixels. And when we're rendering at larger than 60 FPS, we get really less than 16 milliseconds. And most of that is used by the game itself. So, like I said, the foundational model that can do generate those photoreal appearances are large and slow, and they can generate anything in seconds. And what real-time rendering wants is something more specific. It should be smaller and more efficient and more focused.
Bear in mind, I believe when they said that Digital Foundry saw this running in real time, they had a 5090 running the game, and then they had a second 5090 running DLSS 5. They did say that by launch, the goal is to, of course, have it running on one GPU, unified. But the demos and stuff that we've seen, I believe, have had to run on 2 separate GPUs. They say, though, that they're trying to get this done by the time it launches, so it all runs on one GPU, which is crazy. Bear in mind, all while this is also happening, it's still doing the regular DLSS stuff of like rendering at a lower resolution, upscaling, and doing all of this on top of it.
So we distilled. We took what those general model that knows about the world appearance and compressed it into a much smaller one-step pixel space diffusion transformer model that does only one thing: make real-time rendering look more real. It's still not a regular filter because it inherited all the broad world knowledge from those giant foundational models. And it really understands the image that it's looking at, understand characters, understand lighting and context. But what it has lost is generality. It just cannot generate funny cat videos anymore. But because it only does this one thing, we've managed to make it compact and efficient enough to really run side by side in the game and still make the whole experience feel like a game.
I would expect that DLSS 5 is one of those things. It's going to make your game tank. Like, DLSS in general makes your game run better in terms of raw frame rate. At least I would expect this is one of those things when you check this box for generative whatever, it probably drops like 30 frames because I don't see how this thing could run quickly. I just don't. Eventually, sure. You know, the idea that we'd be playing any games at 4K period 10 years ago was insane, but, or 15 years ago was insane. But, you know, as for today, I'd be shocked if this thing doesn't crater performance.
So, narrative intent, frame by frame coherence and streaming, and frame budget, solve all three, we can have generation live inside a render. But the render frame is really only one layer of control. The problem is the mapping between a render frame and the more realistic version of it is not one-to-one. There doesn't exist a reference ground truth for us to match against with. And multiple outcomes could make sense. So which look do you want, where do you want it, and how strong do you want to apply? Those are all artistic calls.
This is where I think like the BGS application went so poorly. So as you can see, they have controls that they'll be supporting. This is, unfortunately, they streamed this in 1080p. So we are limited with our resolution for our enhancements. If only we could DLSS upscale this. As you can see, this structure intensity, global controls. I'm pretty sure it says structure, I think. But this tone intensity. So you can set these scales as you're developing DLSS 5 developer controls. You can set those individually. Developer masking, which I'll show in a second. You've got all these sub-masking. You've got this for each of the different items in the world that it's controlling intensity. So you can change the appeal or the application of these effects based on what's on screen or what's in this scene, right? Model weights to reflect different artistic intent. Intensity controls to fine-tune intensity on a per frame basis. Masking, manual or automatic control over art assets so that you can turn it off when it's applying in a way that you don't want it to. This is why I think some of the applications that we saw in these teasers were at times more aggressive versus less. Like these applications in FC go from like, okay, fine, to like, it's more subtle. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's like, it's not that bad. I can tell it went over, it applied like some softer light on top, but it's not that bad, not that crazy. But then the Starfield one is like the most jarring because it's so clearly like Bethesda. And then it's like, what is that? Yas, Queen. What are we doing? Like, it doesn't even look the same at all. I think they just crank the intensity. You know, AI slot filter intensity, crank it all the way up. Whereas other applications were a little more gentle, I think. I think that's probably what it was.
And they belong to the people making the game, not the model. And the best person to show you what that means is an artist. So let's invite Gav, who's our creative artist, and he will direct DLSS 5 for you guys.
Show me.
Welcome, Gav.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so what I'm going to show you today is how we can control DLSS 5 for everything you see on the screen. Characters, elements, and props, as well as the full environment. Before I do that, I'm going to show you, I'm going back to what Ed has mentioned, that DLSS 5 is basically enhancing the frame, and it's respecting the render frame. It is not changing the geometry in any way, and it's uplifting the image. If we take a look at this example here, you can see that when we turn DLSS 5 on this character, for example, it's gaining better contrast, better ambient occlusion, better contact shadows. I want you to pay attention to the ears, for example, how they gain subsurface scattering that's previously missing. Or look at the ambient occlusion between the top of the head and the piece of cloth on the top of his head. And the eyes gain better reflections. So as you can see, DLSS 5 is fully respecting the render frame and is just enhancing it. Now that we've...
Honestly, that looked really subtle. I think that if this was what was shown off with DLSS 5, I don't think there would have been much outrage, honestly.
And the eyes gain better reflections.
Like, I don't think people would have been raging about that. Like, that's not bad. the Yassify, that's where people get pissed. Where it like looks like a different person. It's like, why did you add lipstick? You know, like, what are we doing? That's where it gets really bad. But this, I would imagine, is a much subtler, lower on the intensity scale thing.
So as you can see, DLSS 5 is fully respecting the render frame and is just enhancing it. Now that we've seen that, I'm going to show you the...
Okay, here we can get a better idea of what it says. It's all structure intensity versus tone intensity. Structure intensity. I'm curious what that means.
controls that we're building in DLSS 5 to art direct the frame. I'm going to start from broad level of controls, and I'm going to show you how we can get very granular with how we can...
I'm going to zoom in on it because I want to see it more closely. More closelier.
And control what DLSS 5 is doing to the frame. The first set of controls is actually the models itself. So DLSS 5 has different models. As you can see in this frame here, we have different models, model A, B, C. They have different output because they're trained on different parameters. When a developer picks a model, you're not locked into one. And the theme that you're going to see in all my presentation here is that you can sort of mix and match whatever you want. So picking a specific model does not lock your whole game, for example, into one. You can pick a model for a scene, a model for a different scene, a model for a cutscene. So you can pick whatever.
And I would imagine that for big budget stuff that like is partnered with Nvidia, like Hogwarts Legacy 2, I would imagine they would even train a specific model just for that game. Like you could train a model just for whatever aesthetic they're going for. I don't know what they're training it on, if it's other games or if it's movies or TV shows or pictures or what, but I would imagine eventually they'll like fine tune models for specific stuff. But that's why you have some games that look totally yassified and then other games where it's like much more subtle, it seems.
Whatever suits you. Then some more global controls. We have structure intensity as well as tone intensity.
Okay.
So structure intensity is modulating the high frequency detail of the frame, and tone intensity is modulating the low frequency detail of the frame. A simpler way to think about it is structure intensity is basically adding things like better ambient occlusion, better subsurface scattering, and better reflections. Whereas tone intensity is a bit more expressive and is impacting the lighting, is enhancing the lighting. As you can see, if we move the tone slider, it's changing the colors because it's effectively changing the subsurface scattering and the lighting. So these are...
Yeah, I think the tone, I don't mind. The structure is what's really, really easy to overdo because it's what starts to add like wrinkles that you didn't see there before. It starts to really change the shape of the face, which makes it look different than it did before. Even if it's informed by like the actual character model and normal maps and stuff like that, it still is like really, really
global
transformative.
Controls that, again, enhance the whole frame. Now, I'm going to show you some controls that we have. There's two different levels of controls. There's controls that come from the engine side and controls that come from the model side. Because DLSS 5 is a smart model, it understands what's in the frame. So this, for example, is a model automasking. The model understands the character, the base character itself, and we can use the slider to control the intensity at which DLSS 5 is being applied just on the base character, as you can see. And this is coming entirely from the model side. I want to show you one more example of that. In this example, DLSS 5 is off on the environment, and we're just turning it on, again, just for the character, because the model understands which one is the character. So this is coming entirely from the model side, because the model understands the semantics of the scene.
Or you could flip it, I imagine, and just enhance the environment and not touch the NPCs or characters at all, so that it's not getting uncanny. Okay, can we flip it?
What I'm going to show you here is an example of the same model with different structure intensity. You can see that structure intensity 25% is obviously closer to the render frame. We have a midpoint, and then we have 95%, which is closer to the maximum uplift that DLSS can provide.
So you can see.
So again, you can see that the developer has the option to pick whatever intensity they prefer for their final frame.
And I can tell the difference. Like I can definitely see how, as he described earlier, ambient occlusion around like the cloth at the very top versus the base frame or close to the base frame. Like I can see the improvements. Again, this application, I do not think you would have seen anywhere near the outrage that that you did when you revealed, because this is like very subtle. This isn't a big deal. It's the like Resident Evil examples or the Leon example or the Starfield examples, which are like so jarring that it's ridiculous. It's like the bigger the gap is that it's trying to make up, and the lower fidelity the base image is, that's when it's really, really jarring. Like if the base image is already pretty damn good, which this is already pretty damn good, it's gonna come off as more subtle and less jarring. But it's really jarring when you go from like a character made of paper mache, like in Starfield, and then you try to go photorealistic with it. It doesn't play well.
And next, I'm going to show you sort of the opposite of that. I'm going to show you the same structure intensity, but with the different models. Again, different models give different outputs because of the training parameters being different. Now that we've taken a look at characters, I'm going to show you how DLSS 5 is also enhancing the rest of the scene. So in this example here, okay, let's say we want to, again, enhance the whole scene. But okay, actually, we don't want to do that. Let's say we want to enhance specific items in the scene. These are controls that come from the engine side. Here we've masked, for instance, the pitcher, the grapes, and the bottles. And these are implemented on the engine side, and you can mask as you see fit. So you can have as many masks as you want. And as you can see, we can control the sliders independently. Each item can be adjusted in intensity and tone completely independently from each other. So you can completely art direct whatever item in the scene you basically want DLSS 5 to enhance or not enhance. And one more example from one of...
Oh, show me the food. Show me the food. I am such a sucker for in-game food. It's one of the reasons I was kind of disappointed with the lack of eventual updates and like DLC for Monster Hunter Wilds, because the food in Monster Hunter World, way better. Come at me, cancel me, I don't care. I loved going and getting like a new thing cooked up every time before we left on hunts in Monster Hunter World. The cooking in Wilds is just not on the same level. Not on the same level. Cancel me, I don't care.
Or our scenes. Here, we have grouped the bottom part, as you can see, the whole cutting board, the props at the top. And again, completely masked. The rest of the environment is not being affected. Here we can control, you can see DLSS 5 is adding better.
So that's what it is at the start. That's the base render of it.
Reflections, as you can see, better contact shadows into the ground. For the bottles, you'll see much better translucency in the bottle, better metal reflections. And those are just the elements that we're uplifting without touching the rest of the scene. Again, tone intensity, structure, everything can be tweaked as the developer sees fit. And last but not least, what I want to show you is how DLSS 5 can enhance the whole environment, in this case, the foliage scene. And as you can see, this scene looks very nice. It is a ray trace scene, but it still looks a little bit plasticky. And when we turn DLSS 5 on, as you can see, the plants come to life and they look really photoreal. That's because DLSS 5 is adding subsurface scattering. And that's something that, as you know, traditionally would be incredibly expensive to do in traditional rendering. And DLSS 5 is taking the image to the next level. Again, here we could control the intensity that we wish fully.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it just comes down to the subtle touches, I think can elevate it. I think subtle touches to like the grapes or the bacon, the subtle touches to the leaves with subsurface scattering on them. That, I think, can elevate it. It's once you start messing with things too severely and when you start tweaking stuff too aggressively, that's when it really, really gets funky and nasty.
So what I hope I showed you today, and this is just a small glimpse of the control we have, but what I hope you get away with is the fact that DLSS 5 is fully controllable from the developer. We have a lot of controls. We are building more, and we're working with our partners to incorporate their feedback so that DLSS 5 becomes a tool for the artists, the art directors, and the creative directors to basically able to have their vision be reflected into the final frame. Thank you.
I think the outrage works, my friends. If you can throw a big enough fit, you can get them to change stuff and make it less sucky. This is better than what it was before. It seems like before it was much closer to just like brute forcing it all the way. And I think the outrage has done a lot to help steer the ship here, because again, this is what they were doing when they thought everybody was going to be super stoked on this. I guarantee you that part of the vision was that Todd was like, yeah, so our NPCs now for Elder Scrolls 6 will look really good because we'll just put it through DLSS 5. We'll just crank that intensity up. And it's like that I don't think, nope. Nope, don't do that. And I think the outrage for how severe of a jump this is has definitely tweaked it and made it so companies are going to be much more cautious before they integrate this stuff, which I think is really, really good and healthy. But it's going to take a studio willing to have a lighter hand with this stuff than they might want, you know, because I think there's definitely going to be a feeling that, hey, if we could put a lot of effort into higher fidelity character models, or we could just turn on DLSS 5 and crank it up. I'm sure that's a conversation that's going to happen.
For demoing for us. Yeah, well, you just saw the whole idea. The frame really defined what has to remain, and Gav, the artist, directed what could change. And you know, control and artistic direction is a really exciting research for us, and this is something we will continue iterate and work on based on the developer feedback that we receive. All right. So
yeah, I don't think this will work well in highly stylized games. I agree. And it might be one of those things where it's not for those. Like, obviously, pixel art, it's not going to make sense to use DLSS 5. You know, that doesn't make sense. If you're talking about a game like Animal Crossing, do you really want, like, photorealistic Animal Crossing? Like, does that make any sense? Has somebody generated that? What, like... yeah. Do you really want DLSS 5 version of Animal Crossing? Do you really want that? I'm not so sure. Like, probably not. So there's going to be times where it makes sense and where it can apply and make the game, you know, the trees and the foliage look a little better. There's going to be other times where it's like, probably don't touch it. It is true. I've seen some people in chat, they mention like, well, you don't have to turn it on. That's true. Like I said, as of right now, like you don't have to turn it on. Eventually though, when something becomes industry standard, it doesn't really matter if you want to turn it on or off. That's where everything is pointed towards. Just like with ray tracing. There were people back when ray tracing was first being pushed with like the 20 series cards where they were like, yeah, well, just don't turn ray tracing on, which was a solution at the time. But then what happens? You start getting games where you can't turn ray tracing off. Ray tracing is built into them. It is foundational. It is required for the game lighting engine to work. Like that's just what it is. This outrage that has hit as a result of all of this stuff though, does certainly, I think, inform the developers that you can't just treat this as a panacea, as a magical cure that fixes everything. You can't. Like enhancements and small touches and improvements, sure. But like major things that change the look, like her lips look fuller for some reason, like that, we can't do. You need to have a light touch with this stuff if you're going to use it at all. And then I think people will be willing to engage with it. Because frankly, yeah, you look up here, like for me, the DLSS 5 stuff is impressive when you look at the environment. Like when you look at this stuff over here, after it passes through, like the fine details in the shadows and in the underlighting and all of that, the ambient occlusion, everything, that does look way better. It's the characters and the faces that get too pretty. That's where it loses me. You can even see over here, like in the window, like that looks way better. It just does. But it needs a light touch, And I think this is an example of how the outrage can certainly steer it in the right direction. But I agree, this is not something that you're going to be able to apply or use in every instance, and you shouldn't, because DLSS 5 applied to this, I don't think would go too well. Yeah, I don't think it would go too well. Yeah. I still can't believe that they did this to Grace. Well, and again, what made it particularly kind of gross is that they did that at the same time that apparently they didn't communicate to anybody they were doing it. So like people within Capcom didn't know they were going to be doing that like they learned of DLSS 5 at the same time everybody else did. And so they're talking about, yeah, we want to be true to the artist's intent. And it's like, you didn't tell the artists you were doing this. Like, what are we doing? Like, it's crazy. So we'll see. I'm if they're going to make adjustments based on the feedback, and if they're going to walk certain things back and adjust it and give full developer controls and all that stuff, then I'm willing to like check it out and investigate it. It's just a matter of being true to the artist's intent, for one. And then I think it's also very clear for the developers to understand that people don't want every game to look photorealistic. They don't want every character to look like an Instagram model. They're not that interested in that. They want true artist like directed frames and art direction and things like that. You don't need everything to be yassified. And I think also the lesson should be for like BGS and some of these other companies is that you cannot rely on it fully as a crutch to do all of the heavy lifting for you when it comes to character design, texture work, lighting work, stuff like that. You just can't. If you do that, the leap is too severe. And I think the other piece of this, which I just want to throw out there, is I think it really brings up an interesting question of how do you market these games? Do you do trailers with DLSS 5 turned on? A lot of trailers nowadays, I wouldn't be surprised if they're rendering with DLSS 4 or 4.5, turned on to upscale to get it running at a smooth 60 for the game capture, for the gameplay reveal. They don't necessarily tell you that, they don't tell you all the settings that are being used when they render something. So like, are they going to be using DLSS 5 when they render trailers? Because that's going to look a lot different than the version of the game you're going to get if you don't have DLSS 5 supported hardware. That starts to get really weird. I don't know what to do there. I don't like that. So there's still a lot of questions, but I think the main takeaway is if you thought they were going to can this and they were going to just move on and dump it, no, they are in way too deep, and they're going to try and figure out why people reacted the way that they did, but we'll see how it goes. They're working on it.